The Asuka period, a turning point in Japanese history, began as early as 538 AD, marked by a profound cultural and spiritual shift, the arrival of Buddhism, introduced from the Korean kingdom of Beech. This moment would shape the religious landscape of Japan for centuries to come. Rather than displacing Japan's native Shinto beliefs, Buddhism was gradually woven into the spiritual fabric of the nation, resulting in a unique syncretic tradition known as Shinbutsu Shugo, where gods and Buddhas would coexist in harmony. The period is named after the then imperial capital, Asuka, nestled in the Kinai region, an epicenter of political, religious, and cultural innovation. At the heart of this transformation was the semi-legendary Prince Shotoku, a regent and revered figure who championed the rise of Buddhism in Japan, closely aligned with the powerful Soga clan, who effectively controlled the imperial court in the late 6th century. Prince Shotoku, himself of partial Soga descent, emerged as a visionary leader. From 594 to 622, he ruled as regent and enacted policies that would echo through Japanese history. Among his most enduring contributions was the 17-article Constitution, a code of conduct rooted in Confucian ethics, emphasizing moral governance and social harmony. He also introduced the cap and rank system, aiming to replace hereditary privilege with a meritocratic bureaucracy. Shotoku wasn't just a domestic reformer, he was also bold on the international stage. In 607, he sent an envoy to China, addressing the emperor with a provocative phrase, "The ruler of the land of the rising sun addresses the ruler of the land of the setting sun." This poetic declaration subtly asserted Japan's identity and parity with China, and is reflected in the enduring kanji for Japan, Nippon. By 670, the name Nihon had become the country's official designation, a name still in use today. The Asuka period also witnessed political upheaval. In 645, the dominant Soga clan was overthrown in a dramatic coup led by Prince Naka no Oi and Fujiwara no Kamaturi, the latter becoming the founder of the influential Fujiwara clan. The new leadership launched the Taika reforms, a sweeping set of political and land reforms modeled on Chinese Confucian ideals. These changes sought to centralize imperial authority, nationalize land, redistribute it among cultivators, and establish a new taxation system grounded in a meticulously kept household registry. These reforms deepened after the Jinshin War of 672, a bloody succession crisis between Prince Owama and his nephew Prince Otomo, which accelerated the move toward a highly structured bureaucratic state. The culmination of this transformation came with the Taiho Code, which codified the administrative structure of both central and regional governments, and solidified the Ritsuryo system, a Chinese-style, centralized legal state that would endure for 500 years. Culturally, the Asuka period blossomed under the glow of Buddhism. Perhaps the most iconic symbol of this era is the Horyuji Temple, commissioned by Prince Shotoku and completed in 607 AD. A marvel of engineering and faith, it remains the oldest wooden structure in the world, a silent witness to the dawn of classical Japan. In the year 710, Japan entered a new chapter of statecraft and culture with the construction of a majestic new capital, Haijokyo, present-day Nara. This was Japan's first true imperial city, meticulously modeled after Chang'an, the awe-inspiring capital of China's Tang dynasty. With its grand avenues and orderly grid layout, Haijokyo stood as a testament to Japan's growing political sophistication and its aspirations to mirror the advanced civilizations of the continent. This era also marked the birth of Japanese literature. The Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, the first two written texts produced in Japan, emerged during this time. These chronicles preserved legendary accounts of the country's origins, tracing the imperial lineage directly to the gods themselves, foundations of the divine legitimacy of the emperor. Meanwhile, the Man-yoshu, compiled in the latter half of the 8th century, became a literary milestone, the earliest and finest collection of Japanese poetry, capturing raw human emotion, imperial grandeur, and deep connection with nature. But despite cultural flourishing, the Nara period was marred by waves of catastrophe. A succession of natural disasters, including widespread wildfires, droughts, famines, and deadly epidemics, shook the stability of the realm. Among them, a devastating smallpox outbreak between 735 and 737 wiped out over a quarter of the population. In the face of these calamities, Emperor Shomu, r. 724 to 749, interpreted the suffering as a sign of spiritual imbalance and sought divine favor through religious devotion. He dramatically increased imperial support for Buddhism, culminating in the construction of Todaiji, a monumental temple completed in 752. The funds for Todaiji were raised in part by the charismatic monk Gyoki, whose grassroots efforts galvanized public support. Once finished, the temple served not just as a religious symbol, but also as a political one, a site of Buddhist ordination led by the revered Chinese monk Ganjin, and a powerful expression of state-sanctioned religion. Yet, the shadow of decline loomed. Japan entered a prolonged period of population decrease, one that extended well into the Heian period. Political tensions also bubbled to the surface. During the 760s, a bold and unprecedented challenge to imperial authority arose. The Buddhist monk Dokyo, with the backing of Empress Shitoku, made an audacious attempt to establish his own dynasty. For a moment, it seemed Japan might fall under a theocracy. But Dokyo's ambitions unraveled after the Empress's death in 770. He was stripped of power and exiled. Amid this turmoil, the influential Fujiwara clan quietly consolidated its position, setting the stage for centuries of political dominance behind the throne. The Heian period, 794 to 1185, named after the capital Heian-kyo, modern Kyoto, marks the final division of classical Japanese history. The era began when Emperor Kamo, the 50th emperor of Japan, moved the capital first to Nagaoka-kyo in 784, and then, a decade later in 794, to Heian-kyo, a city whose name means peace. This new capital would remain the imperial seat for over a millennium, until 1868. But while the throne endured, political power soon passed into the hands of the Fujiwara clan, an aristocratic family that gained dominance at court through strategic marriages to the imperial line. In the early 9th century, a devastating smallpox epidemic between 812 and 814 claimed nearly half of the population, compounding the fragility of the central government. A turning point came in 858, when Fujiwara no Yashifusa had himself appointed sessho, or regent, to the young emperor. His son, Fujiwara no Moditsun, expanded this authority by creating the office of Kampuku, which allowed a regent to govern even on behalf of an adult emperor. This maneuver ensured Fujiwara control regardless of the emperor's age. The clan reached the pinnacle of its power under Fujiwara no Michinaga, who became Kampuku in 996. A masterful statesman, he married 4 of his daughters to reigning and future emperors, securing unmatched influence over the court. Yet, by the late 11th century, even this iron grip began to loosen. In 1086, Emperor Shirakawa abdicated the throne in favor of his son, Emperor Horikawa, but continued to rule behind the scenes, establishing the system of insei, or cloistered rule, in which retired emperors wielded true political power while their successors served as ceremonial figureheads. As the imperial court turned increasingly inward, focused on political intrigue and the refined aesthetic of aristocratic life, it neglected its grip on the provinces. The Ritsuryo system of land nationalization collapsed, and shon, or private estates, proliferated, controlled by noble families and powerful Buddhist temples. Many of these manors became tax-exempt, steadily draining the imperial treasury. By the 11th century, these estates outnumbered crown lands, and with them came a new source of authority: private samurai armies raised by estate owners to enforce their will. 2 powerful warrior clans rose to prominence during this period: the Taira and Minamoto, both descended from imperial bloodlines. As the government lost its ability to maintain law and order, it began to rely on these warrior clans to suppress rebellion and piracy in the countryside, unknowingly sowing the seeds for a new kind of political order dominated by the sword. Despite the political turmoil, the population of Japan stabilized during the late Heian period after centuries of decline, marking the beginning of a transition from courtly rule to feudal governance. During the early years of the Heian period, the imperial court set its sights on consolidating power in northern Honshu, home to the indigenous Emishur people. In 794, the court granted Otomo no Otomuro the newly minted title of Seitai Shogun, Great Barbarian Subduing General, signaling a decisive shift toward military campaigns to pacify the frontier. It was Sakanu no Temuramuro, also granted this title, who would complete the mission. In 802, he led a major expedition against the Emishur, defeating their formidable leader Adarui and bringing the region under imperial control. But imperial dominance would not go unchallenged. By the mid-11th century, the powerful Abe clan, entrenched in administrative roles in the north, began defying the central government. In response, the court turned to the Minamoto clan, a rising military force in its own right. The resulting conflict, known as the former 9 Years' War, 1051 to 1062, saw the Minamoto decisively crush the Abe. Though the court temporarily reasserted its grip on northern Japan, its authority soon began to slip again. Not long after, the region was plunged into further chaos with the later 3-Year War, 1083 to 1089, a civil conflict whose details remain partly disputed. In its aftermath, power coalesced around Fujiwara no Kiyohira, the founder of the northern Fujiwara. From his capital at Hiraizumi, Kiyohira and his descendants would govern a culturally vibrant and politically semi-autonomous northern domain for the next 100 years. Meanwhile, political rivalries in Kyoto were nearing a boiling point. In 1156, a succession crisis erupted between factions supporting Emperor Go-Shirakawa and Emperor Setoku. Both sides turned to military backing. Go-Shirakawa aligned with the Taira clan and Setoku with the Minamoto. The conflict, known as the Hagen Rebellion, ended with a decisive Taira victory under the command of Taira no Kayamori. Now the most powerful man in the capital, Kayamori elevated his clan's influence to unprecedented heights, even placing his grandson, Emperor Entoku, on the throne. But dominance bred resentment. Tensions with the Minamoto flared once more, erupting in the Heiji Rebellion of 1160. Again, the Taira emerged victorious, yet their grip was far from secure. In 1180, an exiled Minamoto heir, Minamoto no Yoritomo, rose in rebellion from his base in Kamakura. Though Taira no Kayamori died just a year into the uprising, the conflict raged on. What followed was the brutal 5-year Genpei War, 1180 to 1185, a struggle that would determine the fate of Japan. The final blow came at sea. In 1185, at the Battle of Dan no Yura, Minamoto forces led by Yoritomo's younger brother, Minamoto no Yoshitsune, annihilated the Taira fleet in a dramatic naval engagement. With that, the Minamoto clan stood victorious. Though the emperor still reigned in Kyoto, real power now rested with Minamoto no Yoritomo, whose rise marked the beginning of a new age of warrior rule in Japan. The Heian period was not only an era of political intrigue and shifting power, it was a golden age of Japanese art, literature, and courtly refinement. Within the palatial halls of Heian Kyo, one that would leave a lasting imprint on Japan's identity. The aristocracy cultivated a uniquely elegant culture, literary expression flourished. Keynote Tsureyuki, a poet and courtier, helped compile the Kokinshu, the first imperial anthology of waka poetry, and authored the Tosa Diary, one of the earliest examples of literary prose in the native vernacular. This new form of writing reflected a broader cultural shift. The emergence of the kana syllabaris, which allowed Japanese writers to move away from the rigid structures of classical Chinese and toward a more fluid, expressive native style. Two of the most iconic works from this period were written by women of the court. Sei Shanagon, a witty and sharp-eyed lady-in-waiting, penned The Pillow Book, a lively and revealing collection of observations, lists, and anecdotes from court life. But it was Murasaki Shikibu, another noblewoman, who wrote what many consider the world's first novel, The Tale of Genji, blending psychological depth, lyrical beauty, and courtly drama. Her masterpiece captured the imagination of generations and remains the crown jewel of classical Japanese literature, which had begun in 630 AD. Meanwhile, Chinese influence, long dominant in Japanese intellectual life, began to wane. By the 9th century, the state had ended its official embassies to Tang China, while monks and scholars continued to travel informally. Japan increasingly turned inward. Native artistic and architectural styles gained ground, evolving rapidly in this new, self-reflective atmosphere. One enduring symbol of this cultural flowering is the Byodo-in Temple in Uji, constructed in 1053. With its iconic phoenix hall seeming to float on a serene pond, the temple epitomized the refined aesthetics of the Heian court, graceful, spiritual, and unmistakably Japanese. With the victory of the Minamoto clan in the Genpei War, Minamoto no Yoritomo emerged as Japan's most powerful figure. But unlike past warriors, Yoritomo chose not to rule from the imperial capital. Instead, in 1192, after receiving the title of Seitai Shogun, great barbarian subduing general from the emperor, Yoritomo established a new government in the east, the Kamakura Bakufu, or Tenk government. Though its legitimacy stemmed from Kyoto, real power had shifted to Kamakura. A new era of military rule had begun, one that would last for nearly 7 centuries. The imperial court retained its ceremonial and religious functions, but it was now largely symbolic. Kyoto remained the official capital, yet political authority resided with the shogunate. This system, balancing imperial tradition with military control, was distinct from the more centralized Ritsuryo bureaucracy of earlier centuries and set a precedent for Japan's feudal age. Yoritomo's grip on power was tested even within his own family. His half-brother, the brilliant General Minamoto no Yoshitsune, became a national hero for his victories in the Genpei War, but was soon viewed as a threat. Yoshitsune was sheltered by Fujiwara no Hidehira, the powerful lord of northern Japan, but after Hidehira's death, his son betrayed Yoshitsune in a failed attempt to gain Yoritomo's favor. Though Yoshitsune was killed, Yoritomo invaded and crushed the northern Fujiwara in 1189, solidifying his rule. In death, Yoshitsune became a tragic legend, celebrated in poetry, theater, and folklore. Following Yoritomo's death in 1199, true power passed to his widow, Hojo Masako, and her father Hojo Tokumasa, who was appointed regent. With this, the Hojo clan ruled from behind the scenes, reducing the shoguns to figureheads. The Hojo regency formalized Japan's shift to a decentralized, feudal structure. Local vassals, known as gokunin, were appointed as provincial governors and stewards, shugo and jido, with the power to enforce law, collect taxes, and raise armies in their territories. In 1221, retired Emperor Go-Toba attempted to restore imperial authority by launching the Jokyu War. The rebellion failed disastrously, and Go-Toba was exiled to Oki Island, along with 2 other emperors. The defeat effectively ended any hope of imperial restoration and consolidated the shogunate's dominance. Yet even as the Hojo held firm control, a storm was brewing, literally and figuratively. In 1274, and again in 1281, Kublai Khan's Mongol Empire launched full-scale invasions of Japan. The samurai, though poorly coordinated and under-equipped, managed to repel the invaders with the aid of powerful typhoons. They were called kamikaze, or divine winds. These victories became legendary later. But the cost was devastating. The shogunate could not reward its samurai, as no land was gained. This fractured loyalty and sowed discontent among the warrior class. Meanwhile, Japanese society underwent major transformation. Around 1250, agricultural advances, better iron tools, improved irrigation, and double cropping sparked population growth, village expansion, and commercial prosperity. In towns and rural temples, Buddhism reached new audiences. Monks like Honen spread Pure Land Buddhism, offering salvation through faith alone. Nichiren preached a more nationalist, fiery doctrine, and Zen Buddhism found eager converts among the disciplined samurai class. Ultimately, the Kamakura shogunate could not survive the forces it had unleashed. In 1333, Emperor Go-Daigo launched a bold rebellion to reclaim imperial power. The shogunate dispatched Ashikaga to Kauji to suppress it, but Takauji defected. He joined Go-Daigo, turned against the Hojo, and led the final charge that brought down the Kamakura regime.